Her silence doesn't mean she's emotionless. It means she's processing what you don't see. When a woman goes silent, most men instantly assume she's done, she's over it, she's moved on, and she has no feelings left. But the truth is, silence is almost never the sign of a woman who has stopped caring. It's actually the opposite. Silence is emotional pressure. Silence is reflection. Silence is the space she takes when she's overwhelmed by feelings she hasn't sorted out yet. When a woman truly loses all feelings, she doesn't go silent, she goes indifferent. And those are two very different things. Her silence is her way of stepping back to understand the emotional story that's been building inside her. She's replaying moments, conversations, your reactions, how she felt when you pulled away, and how she felt when you didn't show up the way she hoped. Women don't process pain instantly. They hold on to details, they feel them deeply, and they revisit them repeatedly until they make sense of them. That silence you're terrified of is actually her looking for clarity, clarity about you, about herself, and about what she wants moving forward. But here's where men always get it wrong. They confuse her distance with disinterest. They panic, they they apologize for things that don't need apologies. They try to reopen conversations that she's not ready to have. And all this does is push her further into a space where she feels misunderstood and pressured. When a woman is silent, she's not asking you to force closeness. She's asking you to hold your frame, stay calm, and let her come back when her emotions settle. What most men don't realize is that her silence is actually a moment where your behavior matters the most. The more secure you are, the more she feels safe to reconnect. The more patient you are, the more confident she becomes in your emotional maturity. And the more you accept her space without fear, the more she feels pulled toward you. Women are naturally drawn to men who don't collapse under emotional uncertainty. She wants to feel that you can handle distance without losing yourself, because that tells her you can handle a relationship. The mistake men make is assuming silence equals closure. It doesn't. Silence is a test of your emotional stability. It's her sorting through feelings she hasn't decided how to express yet. She's not over you, she's evaluating you. And if you stay grounded instead of reacting from insecurity, you shift everything. You become the man she can trust again, the man she can open up to, the man she can feel safe loving without fear of disappointment. And that's why thinking she's over you is the biggest mistake you can make, because most of the time she's not finished at all. She's just figuring out if you're really the man she hopes you could be. Many men make the critical mistake of assuming that because she's acting distant, texting less, or even seeming indifferent, that she has completely moved on from the relationship. This is a dangerous assumption because women process emotions differently than men. And just because she appears calm or unaffected on the outside does not mean her feelings are gone. Women are incredibly intuitive and often handle emotional pain internally before showing any outward reactions. She may be evaluating her emotions, thinking about what she wants, or even testing how you respond to distance. This means that what you perceive as over her is often just a protective mechanism. She's not giving away her feelings freely, which can easily trick a man into thinking she's moved on. Another key factor to understand is the concept of emotional attachment and uncertainty. When a woman has invested time, energy, and emotions into a connection, she rarely forgets it instantly. Even if she appears to be moving on or focusing on herself, part of her subconscious mind is still tied to memories, intimacy, and moments you shared. Men who misread this risk making impulsive decisions like trying to prove themselves, chasing too hard, or emotionally overreacting, all of which push her further away instead. Recognize that her external behavior is not always a mirror of her internal feelings. Observing patterns over time, noticing small gestures, or subtle shifts in energy often reveal more than words or text ever will. Confidence plays a massive role here. Many men feel anxious, insecure, or desperate when they believe she's over them. That energy is loud, women sense it. The key is self control, calmness, and emotional independence. By maintaining your own life, standards, and boundaries, you naturally allow her to process her emotions without pressure. This doesn't mean waiting passively, but rather demonstrating that you are secure, ambitious, and committed to your own growth. When operate from a place of strength, she notices the difference immediately, and the perception that you're still attached diminishes. It's also crucial to understand that communication is rarely literal. A woman might say she's fine or act like she doesn't care, but her actions timing, and even small inconsistencies in behavior often tell a different story. Recognizing this subtle language requires patience, observation, and emotional intelligence. Men who act based purely on words without understanding behavior often misinterpret signals and assume she's over them when she's actually still invested. Ultimately, realizing that her feelings may still exist, even if hidden, shifts your approach entirely. You stop reacting out of fear or desperation and instead focus on your own growth, value, and how you show up in her life. This calm, grounded presence is magnetic because it mirrors the stability, confidence, and leadership qualities that naturally attract women. Remember, her seeming distance is often a test, not a final judgment. Your ability to remain composed and high value is what determines whether she continues to feel a connection. So never assume her heart is gone just because her actions are unclear. Stay patient, stay confident, and focus on being the man who is emotionally stable and consistently valuable. One of the most misunderstood aspects of relationships is the difference between emotional withdrawal and emotional detachment. Many men interpret silence, minimal communication, or lack of enthusiasm as proof that she's over it or no longer cares, but this is far from the truth. Often women pull back emotionally to observe your response, gauge your confidence, or create space to think about the relationship. This is not rejection, it is a natural and strategic part of how women process emotions and assess a partner's value. Understanding this distinction is critical because it changes everything about how you respond. Instead of panicking, overanalyzing, or sending desperate messages, the right approach is to remain calm, consistent, and grounded in your own life. Another key factor is the subconscious testing that women do. Women often test men in subtle ways: timing of responses, attention, willingness to invest in themselves, or even physical and emotional boundaries. These tests are not meant to punish or hurt you. They are a way to measure your confidence, emotional maturity, and value as a partner. If you misread these tests as disinterest or assume she's moved on, you risk sabotaging the connection entirely by overreacting or trying to force an outcome. The men who succeed in these situations are those who maintain self control, independence, and unwavering confidence, which naturally draws a woman back in even when she appears distant. It's also important to recognize that time and space often deepen attraction rather than diminish it. When a woman steps back, it allows her mind to process memories, emotions, and the value of the connection she shared with you. Men often panic during this period and try to fix things immediately, but this usually pushes her further away. Instead, maintaining your own high value lifestyle, pursuing goals, and focusing on your personal growth demonstrates that you are independent, secure, and emotionally strong. This is magnetic to a woman because it communicates that you are not dependent on her for happiness or validation, which is one of the most attractive qualities in a man. Another subtle but critical point is the difference between words and actions. She might say she's okay or act like she's indifferent, but her energy, subtle behaviors, and the way she interacts with you often reveal more than any words could. Understanding this requires emotional intelligence and careful observation. Men who take everything at face value tend to misinterpret signals, but those who tune into patterns, timing, and context can see the truth. She still cares, even if it isn't obvious. Finally, it's essential to approach this situation with patience and emotional balance. Reacting impulsively or trying to control her feelings never works. By staying calm, confident, and high value, you naturally create an environment where she feels safe to reconnect and express her true emotions. The key is to operate from a place of strength, consistency, and self respect, which makes her realize the depth of her connection to you without pressure or manipulation. In the end, her apparent withdrawal is not a sign that she's over you. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate emotional maturity, confidence, and leadership in the relationship. One of the biggest mistakes men make when they believe a woman is over them is reacting from fear instead of confidence. When a man assumes she no longer cares, he often becomes anxious, needy, or controlling without even realizing it. This type of energy is incredibly unattractive and signals to her that he lacks self confidence and emotional stability. Women are naturally drawn to men who are secure, independent, and able to maintain their composure even in uncertain situations. When you respond from a calm and centered place, rather than fear, you communicate that your value is not dependent on her attention or approval. This subtle shift in energy can reignite her interest and make her reassess her own feelings because women are wired to respect and gravitate toward emotional strength. Another important aspect to understand is the power of absence in space. Many men believe that constant contact, reassurance, or proving their worth will keep a woman invested, but the opposite is true. When a woman senses that you are independent and focused on your life, that you are not waiting anxiously for her validation, she often begins to miss your presence. This doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It simply means that you are prioritizing your own growth, happiness, and goals. Space allows her mind and heart to reflect on the connection you shared, and it can stir feelings that may have seemed dormant. Your calm self assurance in these moments makes you more attractive because it demonstrates that you are emotionally balanced, resilient, and high value, exactly the qualities that women are instinctively drawn to in a partner. It's also critical to recognize the difference between patience and passivity. Being patient does not mean doing nothing, it means acting with wisdom and strategic thought. You continue living your life fully, nurturing friendships, pursuing ambitions, and maintaining your health and mindset. At the same time, you allow her the space to process her emotions without pressure. Men who act impulsively, sending long messages, calling repeatedly, trying to win her back too quickly, often push her away because it signals desperation. True confidence lies in balancing patience with action, being present and attentive when appropriate, but never losing your independence or composure. Another subtle but powerful factor is emotional observation. Women rarely give their true feelings away openly, especially when they are uncertain or testing the dynamic. Instead, they communicate through energy, small gestures, timing, and behavioral patterns. By paying attention to these subtle cues rather than taking words at face value, you gain a deeper understanding of her true emotional state. This allows you to respond in a way that is supportive, attractive, and aligned with your own high value presence. Ultimately, the lesson here is simple: assuming she's over you is a misinterpretation of natural emotional processes. By remaining calm, confident, and emotionally independent, you create a dynamic where she can reflect on her feelings without pressure. The man who embodies strength, stability, and self respect is far more likely to reignite her interest and maintain a meaningful connection than the man who reacts from fear. One of the most critical lessons a man must understand in relationships is that actions speak far louder than words. Many men make the mistake of relying solely on what a woman says, that she's fine, that she's moved on, or that she no longer cares, without considering the deeper context of her behavior. Women communicate in subtle, indirect ways, and their energy, timing, and small gestures often reveal more about their true feelings than any statement could. When you pay attention to these signals rather than reacting impulsively to words, you gain insight into her genuine emotional state. Recognizing this allows you to respond in a calm, confident, attractive way rather than falling into the trap of anxiety, over explaining, or trying to force an outcome. It's essential to grasp the concept of emotional reciprocity. A woman who is still emotionally attached may pull back temporarily to see how you handle her absence or distance. This is not manipulation, it is a natural test of your confidence, self control, and emotional maturity. Men who panic, chase, or become overly attentive during this period often signal insecurity and neediness, which diminishes attraction. On the other hand, a man who maintains his own life, invests in his goals, and remains emotionally stable demonstrates high value and reliability. This behavior naturally encourages a woman to reconnect emotionally because she senses security, strength, and consistency, qualities that are deeply attractive at a subconscious level. Another key element is the role of patience and timing. Relationships are not instant, emotions and attachments often take time to resurface. If you assume she's over you too quickly and act impulsively, you may cut off the natural process of her reflection and emotional recalibration. Giving her space while staying confident and high value allows her mind and heart to process her feelings without pressure. During this time, you are not passive, you are actively improving yourself, pursuing passions, and demonstrating the lifestyle that naturally draws her in. The subtle balance of presence and independence creates magnetic tension, a combination of curiosity, respect, and desire that reignites emotional connection. It's also crucial to understand the power of non reaction. When a man learns that a woman is still emotionally invested but does not overreact to her distance, he establishes emotional leadership. She senses his stability, resilience, and independence, which contrasts sharply with men who react out of fear or desperation. This quiet confidence communicates that you are the prize and it allows her to feel safe to explore her own emotions without judgment or pressure. Finally, realizing that a woman's feelings may still exist even when hidden changes your approach completely, you stop chasing validation and start focusing on your own growth, value, and emotional presence. This shift in energy not only protects your own self, respect, but also increases attraction, making her more likely to reconnect genuinely. In the end, understanding that her actions often reveal more than her words allows you to remain calm, confident, and high value, creating a dynamic where she is naturally drawn back into emotional connection. The final key to understanding why she may not be over you is recognizing the subtle power of emotional memory. Women rarely forget a meaningful connection, especially when there has been genuine intimacy, trust, and emotional investment. Even if she acts distant or tries to convince herself that she's moved on, her subconscious often holds on to the moments you shared, the conversations, laughter, comfort, and emotional safety that only you provided. Men often underestimate this because they focus solely on immediate behavior rather than the long term emotional impact of the relationship. When you realize that her emotional memory is still active, it changes your perspective entirely. You stop reacting out of fear and start approaching the situation with patience, wisdom, and confidence. Another critical aspect is the balance between presence and independence. A woman may create space to see how you respond, and during this period, the way you carry yourself is everything. Men who chase over text or seek constant reassurance signal insecurity, while men who maintain a high value lifestyle, pursue personal goals, and remain emotionally steady communicate strength and stability. This balance is magnetic because it shows that your happiness does not depend solely on her attention. Instead, it highlights that you are a complete man who adds value to her life rather than relying on her to fill a void. The tension created by this balance often reignites her emotional interest and makes her reflect on the connection she still feels with you. It's also vital to understand the difference between reaction and response. Many men make the mistake of reacting impulsively when they perceive distance or indifference. A reaction driven by fear or neediness pushes her further away because it signals emotional instability. A response, however, is deliberate, calm, and aligned with your own values and boundaries. When you respond with emotional intelligence, observing her actions, staying grounded, and interacting in a way that reflects confidence, you naturally create attraction and curiosity. Women are drawn to men who are composed, consistent, and self assured, and they often reconsider their feelings when they encounter that level of stability. Another subtle but powerful principle is the influence of high value presence over persuasion. Trying to convince her of her feelings, debate her emotions, or argue that she still cares rarely works. Instead, embodying a high value presence, a man who is emotionally stable, confident, ambitious, and consistent has a far greater impact. This presence acts as a silent magnet, allowing her to process her own emotions and come to her own conclusions about the connection you share. You do not need to force or manipulate. Your actions and energy communicate more than words ever could. Ultimately, understanding that she may not be over you requires patience, observation, and emotional mastery. By maintaining your independence, confidence, and high value presence, you create a dynamic where her subconscious feelings are allowed to surface naturally. The man who embodies stability, emotional intelligence, and self respect becomes irresistible even when she appears distant. In the end, never assume she's gone just because her actions seem unclear. Stay patient, stay confident, and let your values speak louder than any words ever could.